Hello, everyone. Hope everybody had a great Labor Day weekend. We're back here today. We're going to talk about a couple of things. One, we're going to talk about, of course, the COVID numbers. And the second thing we're going to talk about today is Prop NS. And then, of course, we're going to take your questions. So with regard to the COVID numbers, things are pretty much plateaued, it appears. We have been running for the last week an average of about 34, 35 cases, new cases per day. Now, yesterday we did only report 13 new cases, but the thought is that that probably has to do with the reporting over the Labor Day weekend. The day before was 34, 36, 34, 31. So we're running 34, 35 cases, new cases a day in the city of St. Louis. The number of people that were hospitalized, 286 COVID positive patients were hospitalized. That's down a tad from, it had been as high as 300 just 5 days ago on September the 14th. We did still have 78 people of that 286. 78 people were in the ICU and 51 people were on ventilators. And the ventilator number, has been running as high as 52 and as low as it looks like about 44. So we're at 51 today. And so those numbers have been pretty much stuck where they are. 28 people admitted to the hospital yesterday, 27, actually the day before yesterday, 27 discharged. So I think the takeaway here is that things are at a bit of a plateau, just a tiny notch down. We are concerned about what we might see here in a week or 10 days that emanate from any parties or social get-togethers, that sort of thing that occurred over the Labor Day weekend. It has been historically, and I'm talking really about Memorial Day, 4th of July, now Labor Day. We know that people get together, folks let their guard down a bit. Fewer people wearing masks, fewer people social distancing, and we have seen an uptick after a holiday weekend. Hopefully that won't happen, but it wouldn't be surprising. There's some good new information. It's started a few days ago on the city website, the COVID website, for those of you that want to see the information by age groups. That is helpful, particularly as we try to think about how to get kids back in school. And we're not, that's not anything that we're rushing here, but we do know that long term we are very hopeful that we will be able to get kids back in school. Now, in the city of St. Louis, each school district, and there's St. Louis public schools, then charter schools and independent schools, they make that decision for themselves. St. Louis public schools is 100% virtual. They do have the learning centers, educational learning centers, where about 10% of their kids are going to those. They're still learning virtually, not in a classroom situation and not in a group situation, but at a location within the school where they can have some supervision and meals and some help with the virtual learning. So St. Louis Public Schools has only been open for a week, and they started on the 31st, I think it was, of August, so that's only been a week. This is their second week in school. And this is a big change for everybody. It's a big change for school districts, it's a big change for teachers and staff, and we know it's a very big change for parents, and a difficult change. And then the most important people that it's a big change for are the kids. And so everybody's making those adjustments. But there is some new information on our website with regard to, I'm looking for the date on this. Is this recent? Let's see here. Well, it's as of, this is about a week, not quite a week old. And where our average transmission rates estimates by age group, 10 and under, 10 to 19, 20s, are less than an R factor of 1, which should mean that we begin to see decreases in the number of cases in the city of St. Louis. We do know, though, that the hospital numbers are very important to our decision-making here. And the hospitals, of course, have people from across not just the St. Louis region or the St. Louis metropolitan area, but rural areas as well. And as we saw yesterday, one of the rural surrounding counties did go to a red level. Yesterday they announced, and so, you know, unfortunately, some of those folks will also be in hospitals that are here in St. Louis. So everybody just continue to do what you've been doing all along, and wear your mask, socially distance, as we try to work through this, coexist with COVID. And as everybody anxiously is concerned about a vaccine, and you know, it's really too early, I think, to make any predictions about that, although many people are making those predictions. But it still appears to be a few months off, at least, until there's any widespread availability of any vaccines, assuming that the testing goes well. So there's a lot of work to be done yet, and so thank you all for your help and your cooperation in terms of trying to help keep the number of cases down and keep people from getting ill. So that's with regard to COVID. I'm sure we'll have some questions on COVID in a few minutes. I wanted to talk just for a second about a second subject, which is Prop NS. And I've mentioned this here a time or two. It stands for Neighborhood Stabilization, but it's stabilizing LRA, Land Reutilization Authority, LRA-owned buildings, so that then they can be attractive to be purchased by you or someone that you might know in order to finish the renovation. The Prop NS, I want to give a shout out and a thank you to Comptroller Darlene Green, who recently got the bonds issued so that we could spend, it's up to $6 million per year, $40 million over a 7-year period. So up to $6 million a year stabilizing LRA-owned buildings that have an opportunity to then be redone. We've done 3 pilot buildings. One of them is finished. I mean, it's within that far of being finished and will be available for someone to buy here shortly. 2 others are under construction, and then there are about another dozen or so buildings that are out to bid to run this pilot program to see what does it take to put a new roof on a building. Many of them need a new roof. Trying to make this building watertight. Put a new roof on the building. Maybe it needs gutters. Maybe it needs some tuck pointings. Some things to keep the building from deteriorating further, and also to cover some big expenses, like those things, that might prevent an interested party from going ahead and buying that building. So for those of you that are interested in this, go to our website. If we haven't already posted it, we're going to post it shortly. The new Prop NS website, and you'll see a process for nominating LRA-owned buildings to be included in the program. There's a committee which is made up of some residents, some folks who have special expertise in terms of stabilizing buildings, and our own city people in order to select buildings. So go online, take a look at Prop NS. It is a way for us to stabilize our building stock here and be able to rebuild neighborhoods with first one building and then the next one and the next one. So we hope that you will be interested in that, and we're really excited to announce that it's launched, it's up, it's running, and the money is available for the program. I think that's about it. Take a look at our website on that. You'll, for those of you interested in building stock and in rebuilding our city, and in good opportunities, frankly, for redoing buildings, I think you'll find it very, very interesting. So,
Questions?
questions?
Few questions, Mayor. So on the topic of COVID, Claudio's question is, where can they get a free COVID test because some urgent cares are charging for testing?
Well, you can get a free COVID test at a federally qualified health center. So CARE, STL, Affinia, People's Health Center. I'm missing one. But at any rate, yes, you can. And why don't we post that? Why don't we
Okay.
post that? We'll post this in the comments so that you've got the phone numbers and the locations to get a free COVID test. It's been taking a few days to get the results back. Last week, the average was 4.7 days. Some of them are coming back in 2 days, some of them are coming back in 5 days. Occasionally, it takes longer, but it's taking a few days. So after you have your COVID test, what we recommend is that you self-quarantine until you get your results back. Because, you know, hopefully you're not positive, but if you're going to get the test, we recommend that you not be around people until you find out what the results of that test are.
You mentioned back to school. A few folks asking, how is back to school going for SLPS students?
You know, it's back to school, and everybody is making adjustments, everybody's making changes. It's tough on parents, and it's tough on kids. It's tough on teachers also, I'm sure. But everybody's making their way through it, because it's so important that kids don't miss out on the learning that needs to take place. And I know that places a big burden on parents. So thanks to all of you who are trying to work through that. Maybe you're working from home, you're working at one end of the kitchen table, and your kids are working at the other end of the kitchen table, and so we know that's hard, but it's going okay. We just all are anxious for it to, you know, to have more in-school learning.
Melissa's question has to do with whether the city has guidance or rules for church vans, because her church does souls to the polls to help people go vote.
So we don't have any specific rules about church vans. What I would recommend to you, I think Souls to the Polls, that's a clever name. I like that. I'm glad that you're getting people to the polls. Certainly, you've got to wear a mask. And secondly, you know, don't pack people in tight there. Have people wear a mask. And I don't know, maybe you have a 15-passenger van or something like that, where you might want to only have half that many in the van. I know that's more runs, but you know, you don't want to spread COVID either. And of course, people can vote absentee. People can vote by mail. And what we expect to have pretty soon, the election board will figure this out and we'll get it announced. But we will have some polling places where you can go vote early that are located around the city. So, you know, voting, and that'll be electronic voting. And we expect to have those up. If you know, I think it was last week or maybe it was the week before, we funded about $60,000 to the election board in order to try to really hire the people to work at those remote voting locations. We expect to have at least 3 of them, one north, one central, one south. And you can, of course, also vote absentee downtown. So.
On other topics, Mayor, Brian's question is, since efforts were put into place to address some of the cruising and racing and activity downtown, have you seen any results?
It's better. We're not done, but the results are better. There's less cruising over this past weekend. This is the third, or I guess this was the third weekend with a real intensive effort. And so it is improved, and you know, we've made a few tweaks in terms of what streets are open and what times they're open and that sort of thing. So we think it's better, but we're not finished.
Tish's question, Mayor, is, do you have an update on the progress that Cure Violence is making in the city, along with Operation Legend officers assisting city officers?
Okay, so that's 2 different subjects. Cure Violence. All 3 locations are up and running. And The first one opened, I guess it's 3 months ago now. And so they are working, but it's at the very early stages. You know, you don't just do this for a week or a month or even 2 months. You got to keep at this. So Cure Violence, all 3 locations are up and running. The other is our federal partners who are working collaboratively and in conjunction with our police department to focus on our most violent offenders and shooters. And there have been a number of arrests made. You've probably seen some of those that have been announced for individuals. And so I think it's working well. It is strictly helping us to, our police department, SLMPD, to work together with our federal partners collaboratively and cooperatively.
So a couple of folks have asked about the residency requirement, which was passed in Jefferson City.
Mm-hmm.
When does it take effect? When does recruiting begin, and how is it going to attract new officers?
So, as you may know, House Bill number 46 was passed last week, early last week. It has not gone to the governor's desk yet. It's expected that will probably happen next week. That's sort of the timing. The House chair has to sign the bill, and then it gets sent over to the governor for his signature. When that happens, it will take effect immediately, so it's going to take effect here in a week or 2. And we believe that it will certainly help us to recruit additional officers and to recruit, have the availability of a more diverse workforce. It's our hope that several things will happen. One, we'll be able to recruit officers to go into our academy, but also that some experienced officers who live in St. Louis County, for example, may want to come back to the St. Louis Police Department, or maybe they work in another department now and they may want to work for the St. Louis Police Department. So we actually are meeting, both our personnel department and our police department are working right now on their recruiting plans to make sure that we can take advantage of that. It allows officers who work there now, by the way, this is for police officers, firefighters, public safety employees. So it allows those individuals who work there now, or those who are hired for the next 3 years until September 1st, 2023, would allow them to live out of the city, not just until 2023, but if they're hired before that, then they have an exemption from the residency requirement. So, you know, we think it's an opportunity. It's not everything. It's not the cure-all, but it certainly removed one of the impediments to hiring. And so we're in support of that because we certainly need to fill the open positions that we have not been able to hire.
Tanya's question has to do with rental and mortgage assistance out of the CARES Act. How much has been allocated and made it into landlords, property owners, lenders?
So, Tanya, we've got $7.4 million that's allocated. That has gone to about 15 different social service agencies who are processing those applications. The applications are now made through the United Way, to the United Way, and then that's allocated to an agency. This Friday at 4 o'clock, actually all of those agencies have to report into us. And so we will have better numbers by Monday. Hopefully they'll all report into us by Friday by 4 o'clock. But the way it works is the agency makes contact with the tenant. Of course, there's a lot of paperwork because this is federal money. The tenant has to submit various paperwork. The agency also makes contact with the landlord, and the rental assistance or mortgage assistance is eligible. You're eligible for the months March, April, May, nothing before March because that was before COVID. So that has to get worked out, and then the funds are paid directly to the landlord. So I'm going to kind of make a round number guess by now. There's probably around 500 units that have already been processed and paid, but we're going to know that for sure by the end of this week. So we'll report on that next Monday.
And the final question for today, what is the status of the residency as it relates to other city employees? Is it possible that the requirement will be dropped for all city jobs?
So what was passed by the state legislature is that it applies to public safety personnel and police officers who are also public safety, but they define them slightly differently. And so it applies for doctors and nurses and fire department employees, police department, police officers and police civilians. So it applies to all those categories. In November, on the ballot in November will be a question about whether or not city employees in any department should be allowed to live outside the city. So that's a question that'll be answered in November. If it passes in November, then there would be no sunset for public safety employees either. If it doesn't pass, then employees in other departments would not have that exemption.
That's it, Mayor. It's
Is that it?
2:30.
Thank you all. Appreciate you being back with us today. We'll see you on Friday, and be glad to take your questions then. Thanks so much.